Good morning. Welcome to worship with the community of Westside Unitarian Universalist Church, where compassion leads us to work for justice and equality. My name is Tanner Trask, pronouns are he and him, and I am your worship leader this morning. I'm glad you're joining us for the service today, and it is my hope that this gathering will renew your sense of community and connection and nourish your heart, mind, and spirit. Thank you to our AV team volunteers today, our host, Caroline Nixon, our co-hosts, Sue Anderson and Donald Kennard, as well as our other participants this morning, our pastoral care team representative, Kelly Flanagan, our meditation guide, Diane Austin, our social justice committee representative, Cindy Fountain, and we had a last minute change on time for all ages.
And Leanne.
Leanne. I have that written down. Leanne, on our time for all ages. And of course, Dr. Yuki Kumamoto, our pianist and creator of absolutely beautiful music and videos. Our very own Jeff Rodriguez will read a reflection from the late West Side member Dick Trice entitled "The Seven Sins, Deadly or Not." As most of you know, Dick was a longtime member of the church and one of the first to welcome me and my wife to the congregation. I also see there's a lot of other folks here that welcomed me and my wife into the congregation all those years ago. So, morning. At Westside, we are raising the next generation of Unitarian Universalists, and we want them to know that they are an important part of our community. Several years ago, we chose to be radically inclusive and to adopt a multi-generational worship, where our services include all family members. So welcome to all children and our youth of all ages. And if you are so moved, you can try out the chat feature on Zoom by typing in some words of welcome to both members and visitors who are joining us this morning. And on behalf of this church community, I say to you all, welcome. Westside is a community of many beliefs, genders, and sexualities, a community of diverse cultural, racial, and class backgrounds, a community of varied abilities and gifts. Some here find inspiration in the great books, others in the great outdoors, and others still in great conversations. Whoever you may be, we welcome you to bring your whole self into this community. And now I invite you to take a deep breath. And from wherever you are, settle into this sacred space that we create, and let us worship together as we listen to this morning's prelude. Today's opening words are from the Reverend Ian Riddell, "Come one, come all." Come one, come all. Come with your missing pieces and your extra screws. Come with your hard edges and soft spots. Come with your bowed heads and upright spines. Come, all you flamboyant and drab, verbose and quiet, fidgeting and lethargic. All you with a large vision and tender hearts, all you with small courage and tender fears. Bring your lisp and your stutter and your song. Bring your gravel and your drawl and your lilt. Bring your anger and your joy and your righteous indignation. Misfits and conformists and everyone in between, Come into this space and be welcome. Bring who you are. Bring where you've traveled. Bring what you long for, and let us worship together. You can join us for our opening hymn this morning, Morning Has Come, written by Jason Shelton and performed by Scott Milner, Paul Thompson, Susan Thompson, and Sam Welsh. The flaming chalice is our Unitarian Universalist symbol of both the heritage of our past and the light of hope within this congregation today. Please join me in lighting your chalice at home to the words of Reverend Barnaby Fetter as we travel in unknown lands. We kindle a flame we trust will lead us forward as we travel in unknown lands, where the question, shall I ever get there, resounds, a pure, clear note in every silence.
There is always a light. When we're ready to see it, there is always a light. When we're ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There is always a light. There is always a light. When we're ready to see it, there is always a light. There is always a light. When we're ready to be it, to see the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always shine. There's always light. There's always shine. There's always light. See the light, to be the light, to raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will. There's always shine. There's always light. There's always shine. There's always light. See the light, be the light, raise our eyes in the dark of night, to climb this hill, together we will be alive.
Please join me in reciting our West Side affirmation. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with creation. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Good morning. I'm Leanne Maxwell, and I'm here to do the story for all ages. Have you ever felt one way on the inside and looked a different way on the outside? That's what Bunny Bear is about. So that's the story we're going to read today. Bunny Bear by Andrea J. Lonnie. Pictures by Carmen Saldana. There once was a bear who was more than a bear. Sure, he was shaggy and stompy like most bears, and he could be loud, very loud, if he wanted to. But when he was alone, he loved to bounce through the forest, wiggle his nose, and nibble on strawberries. It made him feel free and light and happy. He called himself Bunny Bear. The other bears didn't understand Bunny Bear. They thought he was odd. "What are you doing?" they growled. "Stop hopping around and catch these fish. Stop twitching your nose and eat your meat. Stop sitting there and stand up like a bear." So Bunny Bear left the den without even telling his mama. He bounced through the forest and into the meadow. Then, right there in a patch of tasty flowers, he saw it. A bunny. He tried to say hello, but the rabbit raced away. Bunny Bear bounced after her. Underground, Bunny Bear saw the most beautiful sight, an entire warren of bunnies. They were tiny and fluffy and bouncy, just like Bunny Bear's heart. "What are you doing in here?" whispered one of the bunnies. Bunny whispers were one of Bunny Bear's favorite sounds. "Me? I'm just one of the bunnies," Bunny Bear replied, a little too loudly. The bunnies giggled. Bunny giggles were also one of Bunny Bear's favorite sounds, but not when the giggles were about him. They made Bunny Bear feel cramped and fidgety. The elder bunny looked down his long nose at Bunny Bear. "You don't look like a bunny. You don't sound like a bunny. And you certainly don't smell like a bunny." "But," Bunny Bear gasped, "I feel bouncy and fluffy and tiny. See?" He wriggled his tail and bounced, but his bounces were a little too big. "I think you should go," the elder bunny said. All alone and covered with dirt, Bunny Bear curled up against a tree and sighed. He did not feel like a bear. He didn't look like a bunny. What was Bunny Bear to do? Then he felt a poke on his paw. When he looked down, he saw a bunny. Only this bunny was more than a bunny. "I'm a grizzly bun!" she roared. "You're awfully loud for a bunny," said Bunny Bear. "I'm no bunny," said Grizzly Bun. "I'm a bear." Nose to nose with Grizzly Bun, Bunny Bear asked, "Are you sure you're a bear?" "Of course I am," said Grizzly Bun. "I'm burly and loud and I eat whatever I want." "That certainly sounds like a bear to me," said Bunny Bear. "Really?" whispered Grizzly Bun. "I mean, really?" "Yes," said Bunny Bear. You You just look one way on the outside and feel another way on the inside. That's okay. I'm so sure glad you're here, said Grizzly Bun. Really? But I scared everyone away. Not me, said Grizzly Bun. When I see you, I feel more like me. Grizzly Bun's words made Bunny Bear's heart bounce with joy. He gave her the biggest, bunniest bear hug ever. So Bunny Bear and Grizzly Bun found the perfect place to be themselves. They played and giggled and roared with laughter. And they weren't just bunnies or bears. They were friends, and they were happy. Until... Roar! Where have you been? Growled Mama Bear. I found a new friend, Mama, and she likes me just the way I am. His mother gave him the biggest, coziest Mama Bear hug ever. I'm so happy for you, my sweet Bunny Bear, she said in a berry whisper. Well done, my ferocious Grizzly Bun, said the elder bunny. Let's go home. The next day, the bunnies threw a party, and all the animals in the forest were invited. Finally, Bunny Bear felt like he belonged. Meow, I'm a kitty jay. Moo. Look, I can flutter too. Guys, sometimes I feel really squirrely. And he wasn't the only one.
Good morning, everyone. We are grateful you are here with us for this service. This is the time in our service when we offer witness and support for one another's journeys. While we continue to meet online, anyone can submit a joy or concern at any time by emailing the Pastoral Care team at pastoralcare@westsideu.org or through the web form, located under Care and Support under the Programs tab on the homepage of the church's website. As we share our joys with others, those joys are multiplied. When other hearts know our joy shines all the brighter. As we share our concerns, our community can offer its care. When other hearts know our sorrow, our burden becomes lighter. This week's joys and concerns submitted by the start of service include a joy from Myrtle McMahon. Today would have been founding member Howard McMahon's 91st birthday. He served twice as the president of the congregation. What a great man. Thank you for sharing those with us. It is good to share with one another as sharing draws our community closer together. Please know that our pastoral care associates are available to support you with deep listening and, when needed, through our InReach Fund for short-term financial support of members in need. We are here for you.
Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I breathe out love. When I breathe in, I breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. I will breathe in peace and breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
We open our hearts to those in our community who know both joys and challenges, and to all suffering beings. I will begin with a guided meditation before we move into a time for silent meditation, prayer, or reflection. You will hear our Tibetan prayer bowl to signal the start of silence, and we will sound the bowl again at the end. I invite you to check in with your body, sitting tall and comfortable, and perhaps close your eyes as I share this meditation by Nathan C. Walker. Breathing in, I am aware of my pain. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my pain. Breathing in, I am aware of my past. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my past. Breathing in, I am aware of my anger. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my anger. Breathing in, I am aware of my despair. Breathing out, I am aware that I am not my despair. Breathing in, I am aware of peace. Breathing out, I am aware that I am worthy of peace. Breathing in, I am aware of love. Breathing out, I am aware that I am worthy of love. Breathing in, I am aware of joy. Breathing out, I am aware that I am an agent of joy. Breathing in, I am aware of hope. Breathing out, I am aware that I am an agent of hope. Breathing in, I am aware. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
Good morning, Westside. This is your social justice rep, Cindy Fountain. Westside's plate offering for July is Texas Equal Access Fund, or T-Fund. Texas Equal Access Fund provides funding to low-income people in the North, East, and Panhandle regions of Texas who are seeking abortion and cannot afford it, while simultaneously working to end barriers to abortion access through community education and shifting the current culture toward reproductive justice. Texas Equal Access Fund believes that when it comes to abortion, there is no choice if there is no access. Restrictions on abortion access and funding are discriminatory because they especially burden people with low incomes, young people, people in rural areas, and people of color. We oppose all efforts to restrict abortion rights and are committed to fighting for access to abortion for all. I'm a volunteer with T-Fund. During the freeze, I happened to be the volunteer who helped fund a young woman living out of her car. I was able to locate a warming center very near her in her rural town, and T-Fund's social worker followed up with her to help her get connected to services beyond helping fund her abortion. On September 1st, Senate Bill 8 will take effect in Texas. If no injunctions are in place, it will be virtually impossible to obtain an abortion in Texas. In the meantime, T-Fund will keep doing the important work of funding and providing emotional support for those seeking abortion care. Please contribute to this vital organization, and thank you. You can give online now through the church's giving page or by using the Give Plus app. Select the Service Project Fund, and the link will be put in the chat. You can also mail a check to the church. Thank you so much for your offering, and now enjoy this musical offering from WUUC.
Thank you again for your generosity. And our reading this morning will be read by Cindy Fountain.
Hello again, Westside. Here I am in living color. I want to just do a quick grammar note that you will hear the word E-P-O-C-H in this reading, and people pronounce it differently. So when you hear it, just hear it the way you like to hear it. This is called Why I Am a UU by Reverend by Reverend Dr. Jack Mendelson. Our present state is oppressive, but it is not the end of the road. The cosmos beckons. There is in us the stuff of which new and glorious epochs may be fashioned. I am a UU because I would feel silly being part of any religious movement which faces contemporary life and problems with the basic longing for the theological mangers. Because I want to ally myself with others who are consciously striving to explore and reveal our creative heights and depths. Because I share with Wordsworth this holy injunction. So build we up the being that we are. I am a UU because our religion zestfully celebrates human reason and its reason's tasked to point our way, to seek out the right direction of travel. It is by reason that we know what ought to be. It is by reason that we find meaning in moral decision. It is by reason that we grow responsible. It is by reason that we come to care for ideals, for standards, for criteria, for the arts of logical distinction and cultivated judgment. By reason, we understand the meaning of self-giving and the importance of having a self to give. By reason, we see that the struggle for the life of others is as fundamental as struggle for the life of oneself. That interest in the life of others is deeply woven into the fabric of the life process. That we are not to be little incarnate creatures of selfishness. The self is private, personal, and precious, but it is not isolated from other selves. It is wholly unique, but it is never the exclusive center of the universe. Take it away, Jeff.
Good morning. It is wonderful to be with you here in the sanctuary of our church at Westside UU. It is great to be back in this building where I have not spent much time lately. But it's also a little lonesome in here because there's not very many other people with me, and you're going to hear a little bit of the echo as I'm speaking. I apologize for that, but we'll be able to solve that problem in the future, I hope, when we have a full sanctuary returning to our services again. Today I'll be reading a reflection called The 7 Sins, Deadly or Not. And this was written by a former member of our church, Dick Trice, and it says, who has passed away since, and it is from September 23rd, 2012, almost 10 years old. And O. Henry once said that there was never a friendship that was an accident. And I like to believe that's true because having the opportunity to be a friend of Dick's was a wonderful accident, or not, for me, certainly. Such a smart man, such a wise man, such a thoughtful man, and had so many interesting ideas, so many great things to share, and gave many great reflections for the church, and served us in many other ways as well, too, including, as some of you might remember, he organized our West Side Follies comedy shows for our stewardship programs. So Dick is sorely missed by myself, and I'm sure by many, many other members of the church. Just an outstanding person. I'm going to honor him today by reading one of his reflections. I'm going to warn you, it's a little long, but I think you're going to see as I go through this that Dick had a lot of neat things to share, and it hopefully will be as well worth your time to hear what he had to say as I found it to be when I got to read it again. So, O. Henry said, no friendship is an accident. St. Augustine said, give me chastity, but not just yet. And that one I don't agree with. And there's a variety of reasons for that. We're going to be talking about St. Augustine a little bit more as we go along, and why he might want to say something like that and some of his other interesting thoughts. So let's get started, please. Hell, sinning and sinners are usually more interesting than the righteousness and saints, unfortunately. So today we are going to test that theory, and you will have to be the guinea pigs. Most of us are familiar with the title of the 7 deadly sins, but know very little about them. Most would have trouble naming 3 of the 7 deadly sins, even though they have been around for 15 centuries and have often been the subject of literature, theater, and art, but never enough to make them very familiar to us. What are they? Where did they come from? If you are wondering and trying to recall the particular cardinal virtues in order to contrast them, there were 4 of these virtues from the Greeks back in the Common Era. They were prudence, fortitude, temperance, and justice. And the other 3 came from Christianity: faith, hope, and charity. The 7 deadly sins were determined by St. Gregory the Great late in the 6th century. They are pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, anger, and sloth. And so, quite a lot. When you contrast them with the 7 cardinal virtues, you see no symmetry or logical oppositeness of one or the other. But when they were combined, they were supposed to cover the whole range of human conduct. One of the first reactions upon discovering the 7 deadly sins is astonishment. Where is murder, for heaven's sakes? Where is bigotry, hate, lying, and in many countries, the most popular act of robbing from the poor to give to the rich? So, let's go through the 7 deadly sins. The first which we will look at is pride. Pope Gregory placed it first, calling it, quote, the beginning of all sin, and, quote, the root of all evil. Spinoza also, now I'm going to stop here for a second, because this tells you a little bit about Dick. He's quoting someone named Spinoza, and he didn't tell us who Spinoza is, and if you're like me, you have no idea who Spinoza was, but Dick just assumed we would all know because we're all as well read as he is. Anyway, Spinoza also defined it for us as, quote, pride is thinking more highly of oneself than is just out of love of oneself, quote. We are all familiar with evidence of overweening pride, the kind of egoism, self-satisfaction, and superiority that calls attention to itself. It is often a result not of achievement or worth, but of inheritance, a gift of good fortune. And when you really think of it, what is not a gift? For those who have seemingly overcome difficult obstacles to achieve higher goals than normally would have been expected, how deserving are they? Let me repeat that one. When you really think of it, what is not a gift? For those who have seemingly overcome difficult obstacles to achieve higher goals than we would normally have been expected, how deserving are they? Or we? What about our genes, our physical and mental abilities? How much control did we have over these? Pride of a different kind has become unusually popular and pervasive today. It has nothing to do with individual achievement or merit. I'm talking about things like, quote, we're number one. If it's our team, if it's our religion, our political party, our country, especially our country. How closed-minded have we become? Take patriotism, for instance. Is it perhaps the most dangerous of all pride? It is perhaps the most dangerous of prides. And it is probably the most misunderstood of qualities. It has this reputation of virtue, of courage, of loyalty, when in fact, it really may be one of the most selfish and arrogant of traits. It is the extreme of the, quote, we're number one. The sublime connotation of the word, the worshipful esteem in which it is held, completely obstructs any rational consideration of its real meaning. Does anyone else feel as offended as I do when our leaders end every speech with, and God bless America? Isn't that a little arrogant? And I'm sure this excessive pride is not unique to this country. George Bernard Shaw must have agreed when he wrote, quote, "You'll never have a quiet world till you knock the patriotism out of the human race." Lust is one of the more interesting of the 7 deadly sins. It is defined by Webster as, quote, "pleasure, personal inclination, intense or unbridled sexual desire, lasciviousness, and eagerness." Dick is really working out my vocabulary here, just like he always does. Looking it up through the concordance of the Bible, which is, of course, the source of our subject, you will find references to it in both the Old and New Testaments. Sexual lust has acquired a despicable reputation, principally through the writings of Paul in the New Testament, and later from good old St. Augustine, and from fear-mongering preachers ever since. These two men went so far as to call even monogamous sex between husband and wife an abomination, an act only to be permitted if complete abstention were impossible. You know, as a side note, that reminds me of the Woody Allen quote. He said, "Sex is only dirty if you're doing it right." But I don't think that's quite what they were talking about. St. Augustine is known for the most of the doctrines of Christianity that sensible people so abhor: original sin, fall of man, and predestination. A potpourri of pure poison. Theologians call Augustine, quote, "the Paul after Paul, and the Luther after Luther." For him, one's body and the impulse of sex were disgusting and repulsive. I feel the perverted doctrines of Augustine and Paul have been the cause of more pain, more cruelty, and the outrageous denial of more pleasure and happiness to more human beings through century after century than is possible to comprehend. Contrary to biblical teachings, a lust for life is a good thing. How about a lust for justice and for making our world a better place? How about people like Howard Zinn, Noam Chomsky, Bernie Sanders, the 102 great men and women in the Hall of Fame of Great Americans? How about the many members of this church who volunteered their time for the LWV, the ACLU, the school board, Meals on Wheels, Samaritan House, the South Central Alliance of Churches, hospital and clinical work, giving blood, teaching children, and the thousands more around the world of other volunteers who sacrificed their personal time to speak and act out of their solicitude, their lust for bettering the lives of those who are less fortunate. I ran through a long list there too, one of which was LWB. I'm counting on one of our members to put in the chat what LWV stands for those who may not know of the organization. And yes, lust for sex. Sex is beautiful. The perverse idea of denying this very natural and rapturous act for the illusion of reward in a non-existent otherworld is a sad commentary on the persuasive power of religious zealotry. Envy. The sin of envy, like gluttony, is more self-destructive than it is a danger or harm to others. When we recognize the brilliance, the fame or success of remarkable and famous people, envy may tempt us. But in actuality, experience has shown that envy is more confined to those people whom one knows personally and comes into frequent contact with. Envy is a painful feeling often filled with scorn and resentment, and sometimes a sense of unfairness. A 19th century polymath, H.L. Mencken, polymath, thank you, Dick, recognized one object of envy common to a whole class of people. He wrote, quote, "Puritanism is the haunting fear that someone, somewhere, may be happy." Examples of envy are limitless, but I'll mention only one perhaps is not as obvious as some of the others. It is one evidenced, to me at least, by the reluctance or downright suppression of the simple act of passing a compliment or praise on occasions where it is due. I know none of us are guilty of this sin, but I wonder how many have experienced an occasion where a compliment was most deserved, yet never made. There may be other reasons, but I see this failure as an example of envy, a feeling in us that praise and acquaintance somehow reduces one's own self-esteem. Gluttony. The sin of gluttony is not as sexy as lust, nor as flashy as pride or dramatic as greed, but it often arouses as much or more repugnancy than the other sins. 2 centuries before Pope Gregory listed the 7 sins in the 6th century, there were 8, and surprisingly, gluttony got first billing. There was a time, however, when obesity was envied and respected as a sign of wealth and status. Lean and lanky was the stigmata of the poor, and this, quote, Jan Cassius has a lean and hungry look. He thinks too much. Such men are dangerous. Shakespeare's famous lines must have added to the argument in favor of greater consumption. There also exists, to a certain extent, the reputation of an avuncular temperament of merriment and cheer attached to the portly. Certainly today, especially in our country, the overweight don't arouse the criticism or suffer the discrimination they once did. Their sin is now less a province of the church than a secular matter of proper concern for one's health. Drunkenness is considered a part of gluttony and is certainly as detrimental. It's interesting that drinking itself is not condemned as a Christian sin except by more evangelical denominations. It's an old saw. The Jews don't recognize Jesus, Protestants don't recognize the Pope, and Baptists don't recognize each other in liquor stores. G.K. Chesterton, that prolific writer of profound insight of religious argument and theology, also wrote the popular priest-sleuth Father Brown novels. Father Brown defined the anomalous difference in these words, quote, "No animal ever invented anything so bad as drunkenness or so good as drink," period. And once again, Dick's just so incredible. We got Chesterton, the Baptist, Father Brown novels, all in one paragraph. As I said, Dick was a very well-read person. Sloth. The deadly sin of sloth is perhaps more condemned in this country than anywhere else. No need to outline all the ways in which sloth, classified primarily as laziness, but there are other definitions and ways in which it is exhibited as well. The sad effects on mates, children, and friends who depend on or are connected with a so-called sloth are too obvious to note. But we might acknowledge one less noted element of sloth, but just as pernicious as any, and that is its lack of zest, having no lust for life. There is no doubt that the more things a person has interest in and actively pursues that interest, the more opportunities for happiness he has, and the less he is at the mercy of boredom. Since if he loses one thing, he can fall back upon another. The sloth spends excessive time in leisure. Leisure is a wonderful thing if used wisely, but the sloth demeans that pleasure. But let's now look at the opposite extreme of sloth. In this country, there's an abundance of that quality. Americans work harder and longer hours than the citizens of all other industrialized nations. The average American works 49.5 weeks per year, which is 4 weeks more than the French or Finnish workers, 3.5 weeks more than German or Swedish workers, 3 weeks more than the British, Danes, Irish, Dutch, and Italian workers, and 2 weeks more than workers in Japan, as well as several other countries. In fact, we are the only industrialized country that does not have guaranteed vacation days by law. Anger. This is another of the 7 deadly sins that is really a sin only in excess. Of course, it's excessive when it defines a personality more than anything else, and when it affects relationships negatively, especially when it sets a family on edge. filled with dread, draining comfort. I totally butchered that one. Let me back up for you, sorry. It's excessive when it defines a personality more than anything else and when it affects relationships negatively, especially when it sets a family on edge, filled with dread, draining comfort and pleasure from what should be a happy and healthy life. People who suffer from excessive anger are not likely to be unaware of it. Family and friends will erase any doubts they may have. The remedy often lies not in recognition, but in discovering the cause of the problem, which is often not consciously known. I won't go into all the possible causes, but we'll consider for a moment one of them, one perhaps more hidden than others, and that is the positive dislike of oneself. One of the greatest essayists who ever wrote a syndicated newspaper column was Sidney Harris. Harris wrote, quote, "It is impossible to have a good opinion of oneself and a low opinion of others. The downgrader is projecting his or her self-contempt," end quote. Now, to be sure, anger is not always a fault. I don't remember who said it, but there is great truth in this quotation, quote, "Anyone who doesn't get angry at the right thing for the right reason at the right time is a fool." And it could be added, quote, "and no friend of liberty or democracy." Next sin, greed. The second most deadly sin is the one I have actually saved for last. I think it should be foremost of the deadly sins, but I concede that pride, which is first on the Christian list, plays a large part in excessive greed. Greed is by far the most harmful of the seven, as witnessed its effect on almost all governments. Greed is the excess of desire, which is in itself natural and good. We desire to be happy, to have food, shelter, clothing. We want leisure time, food for the mind, comfort, friends, recognition, entertainment. But when the gratification of desire causes pain, harm, or loss to others, it becomes greed. Greed is the father of the greatest evils of all. I suppose it begins in childhood, when some kids want and take more than their share of the attention and toys. Along the way, it may lead to lying, cheating, stealing, and eventually to killing. Even the killing of millions of human beings if that person is in power. As greed progresses, it becomes smarter, more ambitious. No target is too large or impregnable. The bigger the prize, the greater the effort to acquire it. As soon as societies begin to form, leaders were accepted and collective assets such as food and common tools began to be accumulated and stored for the future. These stored goods, of course, then became the prime targets of greed. The key to the vault of these treasures lay, of course, in the hands of the people elected or appointed to use the goods wisely and honestly. Unfortunately, the number of governments in history that have seriously adhered to this principle have been few and far in between. The policy of our own present government has become plain and simple larceny, stealing, swindling, defrauding, and looting of every dollar possible. Our government is now an embodiment of greed. It and the corporate world that owns it have set their sight on all of the richest funds available to it. Wars, of course, present the mother lode of loot, the open door to non-competing contracts, to monopoly, to freedom from accounting or oversight, to fortunes from natural resources stolen from defeated countries. And when wars can't be easily fomented, the natural resources and manpower of weaker nations are stolen by the seduction of their leaders and elimination of civilian protest by the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, the World Trade Organization, and by the CIA. They have been accomplishing this new system of nation rape ever since the successful overthrow of the popular premier Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran by our CIA back in the 1950s. If you're not familiar with that particular story, it's worth checking out. It's quite disturbing. Overthrow by our CIA back in the 50s, where we first learned that military might was not the only way to take over a country. Our corporatist government has privatized or is privatizing hospitals, prisons, schools, and armies, and has salivated over the billions in Social Security for decades, but has so far failed to steal it, although Paul Ryan and his owners' efforts aren't likely to stop. Another huge pot at one time was corporate pension funds, and this one they have purloined right under our noses. Time magazine, October 31st, 2004, a copy of which I have kept, that's so Dick, 2004 wrote how our Congress, made up of both parties, had since the 1980s passed laws that encouraged corporations first to borrow from pension funds and ultimately to take them away completely, to steal them. They have written laws, and this quote is right out of Time magazine, quote, to deny workers the right to sue to enforce retirement policies, ... corporate promises are often not worth the paper they are printed on. Well, this is a neat page, as you'll see in a moment. Well, there you have the 7 deadly sins. Maybe a little overemphasis on that last one, but right now that is the one we most have to fear. Pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, anger, and sloth, just a sampling of the many frailties of the human animal. Now I'm going to actually hold up the page here for a second and let you see, because this is the kind of writer and editor Dick was too. He inserted some extra comments in here and crossed out this section that he thought was not necessary. I disagree. I'm going to share it with you. It's now time to drop the subject of sins and read a few words to kindle some good feelings. Over the years, and this is the part he deleted, over the years, as a Unitarian and then UU, I have had the honor, whether deserved or not, and the pleasure of giving a few of what were then called sermons, now reflections, which is a much better description. After a few years, I decided that a reflection should be defined, that I should define just exactly what a reflection is, that it differs from a report, a biography, a eulogy, or other talk. My eventual conclusion was that a good reflection should accomplish 3 objectives. Right or wrong, at least these are my own requirements. Number 1, it should create interest. Number 2, it should provide information, a thought that could possibly be new to the listener. And 3, it should kindle some good feelings. So for this purpose, and now we're back out of the deleted part and back into where he picked it back up. For this purpose, I have chosen 2 quotations. The first is from James Baldwin's book, Nothing Personal. He wrote, quote, "For nothing is fixed forever and forever. It is not fixed. The earth is always shifting. The light is always changing. The sea does not cease to grind down rock. Generations do not cease to be born, and we are responsible to them because we are the only witnesses they have. The sea rises, the light fails, lovers cling to each other, and children cling to us. The moment we cease to hold each other, the moment we break faith with one another, the sea engulfs us and the light goes out." And for the second quote, I have chosen a brief quotation from the Unitarian Transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson. And he wrote, "There is a time in every man's education where he arrives at the conviction that envy is ignorance, that imitation is suicide, that he must take himself for better or worse as his portion. It is harder because you will always find those who think they know what is your duty better than you know it. It is easy in the world to live after the world's opinion. It is easy in solitude to live after our own. But the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. And that's the conclusion of Dick's reflection. I'm so grateful to his family for sharing these with us and giving me the opportunity to get to read them to you. I hope it was beneficial for you. I think he accomplished his 3 reflection goals personally and did that. And the last thing I want to share with you, of course, because Dick was also very thorough in his work, is he wanted to pick his closing hymn, and you might be able to read it here on the script. His choice was Let It Be a Dance. So that's what we'll do. Thank you so much for listening. Have a great day.
Well, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Dick. Thank you, everyone else that was a big part of this service. We have, to end up here, we have our closing words. These come from the Reverend Maria Teresa Gallardo, the president of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Philippines, titled Blessed with Questions. Some came here to be blessed with answers in a tumultuous world. Let us hope too, however, that many of us have been blessed with questions to direct us with a clarity of mind, to steer our logic towards kindness and justice always. And you can join me now in the congregational closing as we extinguish our chalices. Let us go in peace, believe in peace, and create peace in our lives and in the world. Thank you all.